Hello, everybody. Hello, church. Just like to hello, Daniel Odell. Wow. I just want to welcome those visiting, those who are here to support those getting baptized. Thank you for coming. This is a super exciting day for us. So, as you can tell from this tub here, special day for us, baptism. 4 young men, all in black here. I was thinking we kind of look like a boy band or something, like all right? All in black here. They're publicly dedicating their lives and commitments to Jesus, right? And we actually are going to get to hear about how God has been working in their lives. But before we get to that, fun dunking part, and you're trying to figure out who's going to hit their head on the back again, I want us to just spend about 10 minutes reflecting together about the stories of our lives. Right? Just like the 4 guys getting baptized today, God is working in each and every one of our lives in these unique ways. Every one of us has a special story to tell, and we're meant to tell it. So this is what we're going to learn from our psalm today. We're in Psalm 107 today. So we're just going to read the first 3 verses together. First 3 verses: Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. Those he redeemed from the hand of the foe, those he gathered from the lands, from east and west, from north and south. So right in the middle there, there's actually a really interesting command, right? It's a command that for those who have experienced God's goodness, for those who have experienced God's salvation, they are to tell their story. And so for me, that raises a question right away. Why? Why tell their story? Why isn't it just good enough to say, like, hey, God is good, his love endures forever, trust him, and then just leave it there and then move on? Like, that should be good enough. And so the question is why? And upon reflection, I think it's because we're not just computers. We're not like a robot where you just input code and data points and then we just do what we should do. No, we are complex beings with intricate emotions. We thrive off deep connection with others. And if you think about it like theologically, right? We are made to reflect God. And God is love. And love only exists in relationships. And so because of our ability and even our need to connect, to empathize, and to love, the stories of others have a way of shaping us that simple commands and statements do not. So here's an example. In 2015, I went to a conference in Atlanta, and this guy, his name's Levi Lusko, he was making the point that we should live with a kingdom mindset, okay? That everything we do, we should be focused on the promises of God and the future joy that's ahead of us. And so he could have simply said, live with a kingdom mindset. It's good for you. And I feel like that would have captured the whole message, right? But instead, he went beyond that. He shared his story. He shared about his Christmas of 2012 as he and his wife were finishing up date night. They were going to pick up their kids. As they were doing that, something terrible happened. As they entered the house, his 5-year-old daughter, Lenya, was having a severe asthma attack. And despite all their efforts and despite all the efforts of the paramedics and the doctors, Lenya didn't make it. And it was through that story he shared his revelations, especially as he struggled with why did God allow this to happen. So I'm just going to share a few things he told me, and it stuck to me. So he told us that at Lenya's baby dedication, in front of his whole church, he promised God, he said, God, Lenya is not ours, Lenya is yours. And he shared how that promise gave him the peace he needed to get through this tragedy. God just brought her back home to where she belongs. He shared that as the years passed, right, as the years went by, he was dreading life because he felt like the little memories that he had of Lenya were slowly, he was losing them, right? He felt like as life was moving on without her, he was drifting further and further and further away from her. But one day he realized something. He said that when he put on a lens of faith, he saw that every day that passed wasn't another day further away from Lenya, but it was a day closer and closer to Lenya, closer to the day they will be reunited and be together again. He shared that when he lived with a kingdom mindset, he knew that the Bible promised what was in front of him was not the end of the story. His story changed me. Okay, I was listening. I felt a shift in me. I knew that I would be able to see life the same again. It changed me in a way. A simple statement like "live with a kingdom mindset" could have never changed me. And so our stories are powerful. It's often how we think and how we make sense of life. They're God-given and they're meant to be shared for the encouragement and for the growth of others. And so back to our psalm, through the rest of the psalm, it's just simply God's people telling their stories. We read 3 of them today, but as we go through them, let your imagination work, right? Use that creative part of your brain. Let it paint a picture in your head. Like, what's the setting? Who are the people? What are they like? What's their situation? Let this be more than just words. So we'll start with the first story. Some wandered desert wastelands, finding no way to a city where they could settle. They were hungry and thirsty, and their lives ebbed away. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He led them by a way to a city where they could settle. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind. For he satisfies the thirsty, and he fills the hungry with good things. Our second story, some sat in darkness, in utter darkness, prisoners suffering in iron chains because they rebelled against God's commands and they despised the plans of the Most High. So they subjected them to bitter labor. They stumbled and there was no one to help. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble and he saved them from their distress. He brought them out of darkness, the utter darkness, and broke away their chains. Let them give thanks to the Lord for and his wonderful deeds for mankind. For he breaks down gates of bronze and cuts through bars of iron. Here's the last story. Some became fools through their rebellious ways and suffered affliction because of their iniquities. They loathed all food and drew near the gates of death. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. He sent out his word and healed them. He rescued them from the grave. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind. Let them sacrifice thank offerings and tell of his works with songs of joy. So you might have noticed something that kind of stayed the same throughout the story, mostly probably because I highlighted it. All these different stories are summarized by the same conclusion. Okay, that God has unfailing love for us and he does wonderful deeds for us. That is the kind of God that we worship, the God of covenant love. And the word love that we see over and over again in the Hebrew is the word chesed. And it means loyal love. The great thing about it is that it's not just a sentimental feeling. It's not the love that we think about when we talk about love in our day, right? But as we see in our story, or in our stories, in every case, his love is proven by action. It's a love that does something. It's a love that keeps promises even if it'll cost everything to keep. And that's the love where the story of every single Christian is built on. Romans 5:8 explains it like this. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. This verse you can write a whole essay on it, but I think there's 2 very powerful ideas about God's love here that changes everything about the way we see our stories. The first one is that God in his love gave up even Jesus for our good. And because we know he paid the heaviest price for us, we can know that he is completely invested in us and always for our good. And I don't know about you, but that gives me all the confidence in the world. The second is that while we were sinners, his enemies, while we were at our very worst, when we were least deserving of it, Jesus died for us. And that absolutely nothing about us deserves God's love, and yet it's because of who he is, it is given to us freely. That remains true when we're at our worst, and that remains true when we're at our best. And that's where our story begins. That's our identity. We are a redeemed people, saved by grace, deeply loved by God. And as we start there, and as we move on forward in life, each of us will have all sorts of different and unique experiences where God is continually proving his love for us. And so, tell your story. Tell it so that those who hear may trust in God and be encouraged as they live for him. Our psalm today concludes with this verse here. Let the one who is wise heed these things and ponder the loving deeds of the Lord. I'll read it again. Let the one who is wise heed these things and ponder the loving deeds of the Lord.